Merhaba, merhabalar efendim. Hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Sabah da söylediğim gibi bir önceki oturumda dünyada bir ilke aslında şu anda şahitlik yapıyoruz. AVERE Şarj Show konferansı, elektrikli araç şarj markalarının dünyada ilk kez sahneye çıktığı bir platformdayız. Çok değerli konuşmacılarımız olacak. Hemen kendilerini takdim etmek istiyorum. Dünyanın çeşitli yerlerinden konuğumuz olacak, konuşmacılarımız da var Zoom aracılığıyla. Efendim, AVERE Türkiye Başkan Yardımcısı Haluk Sayar Beyefendi'yi sahneye davet ediyorum. Ve AVERE Genel Sekreteri Philip Wengel.
Merhabalar, hoş geldiniz. Ben Haluk Sayar, AVERE Türkiye Elektromobilite Derneği'nin Başkan Yardımcısıyım. Şimdi ilk 5-10 dakikalık bölümde kısaca AVERE Avrupa Elektromobilite Derneği ve arkasından Türkiye Elektromobilite Derneği'ni kısaca size aktaracağım. Ve sözü sonrasında AVERE Genel Sekreteri Philip Wengel'e vereceğim. Bu arada oturumumuz Zoom toplantısı aracılığıyla yapılacak. Ve bu oturumda değişik ülkelerden Polonya, İspanya, İtalya ve Slovakya'dan ülke temsilcilerimiz bizimle olacak. Ve bu toplantının amacı esasında o ülkelerde neler oluyor, şarj konusunda hangi aşamadalar, pazar payları nedir, tüm bu soruların cevaplarını beraber bulmaya çalışacağız bu oturumda. Şimdi AVERE oldukça eski bir dernek. 1978'de petrol krizi zamanlarında kurulmuş olan bir dernek. Ve 2010'lu yıllara kadar esasında faaliyetlerini devam ediyor ama tabii dünyada da pek elektromobilite ile ilgili çok fazla gelişme olmadığı için 2010 yılından sonra, ki neden 2010 yılı? Lityum iyon pillerde özellikle ciddi bir gelişme başlıyor. Ve artık araçlarda da kullanımın önü açılıyor. Sektör ve dolayısıyla AVERE Elektromobilite Derneği de hızlanıyor, çalışmalarına hızlanıyor. Ve 10 sene boyunca hızlı bir şekilde çalışmalarına devam ediyor ama milat noktası olan 2020'ye geliyoruz. 2020'de bildiğiniz gibi, hepimizin bildiği gibi Avrupa Green Deal dediğimiz yeşil düzen kabul edilmiş oluyor. Ve bu tarihten sonrasında AVERE çok daha hızlı bir şekilde roket gibi büyümeye başlıyor. Ve zaten Philip Wengel de birazdan size bu konulardan bahsedecek ama 4 tane amacı var AVERE'nin. Bunların hepsini görüyorsunuz. Bir kere güçlü bir elektromobilite endüstrisini amaçlıyor. Bu çok önemli. Bu elektromobilite endüstrisi yeni kuruluyor dünyada çünkü. Daha önceden böyle bir şey yoktu baktığınız zaman. 2010 öncesinde elektrikli şarj istasyonlarıyla ilgili bir alan, bir sektör oluşmamıştı. Tabii ki temiz, sessiz ve sağlıklı şehirleri amaçlıyor. Yani bu olmazsa olmaz konulardan bir tanesi. İklim değişikliğinin baş nedeni olan fosil yakıtlı araçların kullanılmaması ve temiz şehirleri arzulayan, hedefleyen bir kuruluş AVERE. Üçüncüsü tabii ki enerji tasarruflu ulaşımı hedefliyor. Bugün içten yanmalı motorlu araçların verimlerine baktığınız zaman komik %15-20 civarlarında verimleri var. Yani toplam aldığınız enerjinin gerçekten faydalanabilir kısmı %15-20'lerde. Ama elektrikli araçlarda bu %80-85'lere kadar çıkabiliyor. Dolayısıyla enerji verimliliği de bu alanda çok önemli. Doğru kullanmak enerjiyi. Ve tabii ki nihai amaç fosil yakıtlardan kurtulmak. Bu fosil yakıtlardan kurtulup yenilenebilir enerjiye dönüşmek ve elektrifikasyonla bunları gerçekleştirmek amaçlarından bir tanesi. Tabii AVERE ile birlikte AVERE Avrupa Elektromobilite Derneği ama 2 tane daha ana dernek var dünyada baktığımız zaman. Bir tanesi ETLA dediğimiz Amerika'da örgütlenmiş olan bir dernek bu konuda. Bir de üçüncüsü Asya Pasifik ülkelerinde örgütlenmiş bir EVAP var. Bu 3 dernek esasında Dünya Elektrikli Araçlar Birliği'ni oluşturuyor. Saç ayağı gibi. Galiba fazla geçtim. Geri geliyorum. Evet. Bu da bizim AVERE Türkiye'nin kısa bir tanıtımı. Biz 4 sene öncesinde AVERE Türkiye'nin temellerini attık. Bunu da Boğaziçi Üniversitesi'nde Kasım 2018'de yaptığımız strateji toplantısıyla yaptık. Bu strateji toplantısında iki ana başlık vardı. Biri ekonomi, diğeri teknoloji. Bu iki başlığın da ortak paydası elektromobiliteyi temsil eden bir sivil toplum kuruluşunun eksikliği idi. Biz bu eksikliği doldurabilmek adına 2018 Kasım ayından itibaren faaliyete geçtik. 2020'ye kadar da çeşitli organizasyonlara ev sahipliği yaptık. 2020'de malumunuz bir Covid-19 sürecine girdik ve uzun süre esasında 2 sene boyunca webinarlerle idare etmeye çalıştık. Neyse ki son 5-6 ayda Covid-19'un etkilerinin gitmesiyle artık normal düzene girmiş ve sizlerle bir araya gelmiş durumdayız. Şimdi sözlerimi bırakmadan önce bu oturumda esasında cevap arayacağımız sorular bunlar. Biz Türkiye'de artık yaşıyoruz. Bir başlangıç noktasındayız esasında elektromobiliteye geçişin. Hemen hemen yeni başladığımız için başlangıç noktasında olduğumuzu söyleyebiliriz ama bizden biraz daha önce hareket etmiş olan ülkeler var. Mesela Belçika veya işte İspanya ya da İtalya gibi. Polonya aynı şekilde. Avrupa Birliği ülkelerinin olması itibariyle daha öncesinden regülasyonlarını hazırlayan ülkeler bu. Nitekim Slovakya gibi. Şimdi bu soruları birlikte arayacağız ve ben sizlere AVERE, Avrupa Elektromobilite Derneği'nin Genel Sekreteri Philip Wangel'le tanıştırmak istiyorum ve sözü ona bırakıyorum. Philip, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and I'll just see if the presentation is there. So, it's a pleasure, of course, to be here in Istanbul and to see the success of the exhibition and the conference. When we were here 3 years ago, when we established AVERE Turkey, which we give with our ideas and our principles, the stimulants, it's a great pleasure to see how it has been evaluated. Where did we start it with AVERE? It's in the late 70s, and yeah, actually, in a way, I'm a bit sad because our founders were actually focused on finding alternatives for petrol products. In the 70s, we had the first oil crisis, and during that oil crisis, they thought, what can we do as alternatives? Can we make e-mobility happening? Can we bring it up front? And today we see still a high dependency on oil products, certainly with the invasion from Russia now. We are not there yet. We could have been further. Now, we have a lot of things to thank on the development of the lithium battery, and we know all that this has been a process that has been achieved, a lot of things. Just think about your cell phone. If we still had to carry around the first generations of batteries, we will not or never carry around a cell phone, a smartphone with a 10 kilo battery around. So that will be definitely impossible. Now, where are we today? We are in a very different landscape. E-mobility is happening. You see it here, you see it everywhere. Electric vehicles are coming widespread on the roads in big numbers. I think most of the car makers have one or even several models available. Our vision is to decarbonize transport already by 2030. So that means from 2030 on, we go for full electrification of all aspects of transport. And why is that necessary? Well, we come back to the COP, the agreement in Paris. We want to achieve climate change measurements by 2050. And if you want to get by 2050 there, you need to start really in time. Because if not, we will definitely have more issues on that aspect. We have to do it together, and we hope that we can do it from a strong point of a European point of view. Today, also, we have been growing with our members, already indicated. We do it together with associations, but also directly with industry members, just to make e-mobility happening. We do it with the industry, we are not doing it for the industry. So that's a bit an aspect which is important to keep in mind, because we are driven by our mission and vision. We are not driven just to please one or other industry. Of course, we have to collaborate, and it's with a strong collaboration that we can make it happen. What is the challenge? So these numbers are massive. We have 308.5 million internal combustion engines on the roads, and they have to get clean. Let's call it cleaner. They have to be electrified. They have to find alternatives how to make it. The biggest number we find on the passenger cars. There we see the most approaches. The next step is also happening for vans, trucks, and buses. Now, last year we were talking with the industry, and we were looking what does the industry actually want, or what are the biggest concerns. At the same time, we also looked what is the European policy doing, what are the policy measurements in place. And to keep it short, because you can still read the study, and I think it's still relevant today, you can see that actually the industry was demanding for a stronger policy. And that's also a message that I bring to national policymakers, also to Turkey. If you have a clear path, how to go, what targets are, everybody knows what to do. So it's easier to make also your industry switch, how we're going to make cars, how we're going to develop infrastructure. If you know that this is the target, then you know which path line we have to take. And we are good ahead. This is the numbers from the European Union. So you see that the take-off from electric vehicles was a very tough start. But once you're there, this line will continue to go, certainly with the measures we have today. And this is the numbers of Turkey. And I'm actually very pleased to share them, because also Turkey is almost in the same line. Also the graph is very parallel, and that's what we see with all European countries. Already mentioned, success of the battery technology. Today we get, actually for the same price, much more. The battery is getting better, you can charge better, you get more energy density, you can drive further, you can charge them faster, and the lifetime expectations are also tremendous. So there is not any threshold to stop developing electromobility. Now, mentioning the better charging capacities on the battery side, we also see better charging infrastructure coming. This is the graphs from the European Union as well, to give an indication. And there we see the parallel. The uptake of electromobility is going in hand with the uptake of the charging infrastructure. Is it going good everywhere? Definitely not. But we see that the possibilities are there, and that some countries are really successful, and that we will hear from the dialogues later on. And this brings me to this graph, and then you see that the charging development by countries in the European Union. And they are actually very different. It's only the EU, sorry for that. I could include Turkey or the EFTA countries in this. But then you see two peaks, and one is a very special one. It's the Netherlands. And then you think, why the Netherlands? And this goes in hand with the approach that we also advocate. How many charging points do we need? There is not a magic formula, unfortunately, maybe, but it's important to know what do you want to achieve, how fast you want to decarbonize, how many EVs you want to have on the road, and then we can tell how many charging points you want. And the Netherlands is a good example of that. By 2030, the sales of internal combustion engines will be forbidden in the Netherlands. So only electric vehicles or other alternatives, as long as they're clean. And the Netherlands government has discussed with the provinces, etc., etc. It's a very small country with a high density of population. We need to offer quite some solutions to make it happen. And they made a national action plan for charging infrastructure. So they want to install by 2030 1.8 million charging points. Not all public, but a mix of private, semi-public, and public. Fast charging and slow charging. And that's the way to go. Put Norway next to it. In Norway, you will not find so many charging infrastructure. And you think, yeah, but Norway is the country in Europe where the electrification is going the best. Different country. Big country, little population, different cities. And we know from the Norwegians that 80% of them charge at home or at work. And this confirms actually the approach look case by case how to go for the electrification. Don't fixate yourself on the magic number. That magic number is not existing and will never exist. Also here, the growth of the charge infrastructure in Turkey we don't gonna hide, the numbers are still little, but it's going also in a good direction. We get more EVs on the road and we get more charge infrastructure in place as well. This is public infrastructure. Don't forget, each electric vehicle you can charge wherever there is electricity. So we don't need always specially infrastructure. Now, what is the biggest challenge of all this is to explain what charging infrastructure means. It's really indicated really good in the middle, the EV user. So it's with the EV user that you have to bring all these possibilities happening. So if you make a charging with your vehicle, there is a lot of things happening. A lot of data exchange, how you're gonna pay it. Is it paid by a credit card? Is it paid by other possibilities? This is a picture of that. And this we have to explain. We have to explain it to policymakers. We have to explain it to who is going to install the charge infrastructure, how complex this system is. It's feasible as well. We can do it. We do it every day. Every day is X number of million chargings are happening. So the technology is in place, the complexity is there, and that we have to explain that we also have the right framework in place to make it happen. So the rollout of this charge infrastructure is very important, and we need to do it hand in hand with policymakers on federal level, but also on the local policymakers, because everything is different. Come back to my third point here even. Home charging is likely to remain the backbone. Yes, indeed, home charging is also key of the success. So don't forget that. What are the challenges? And that's what we see all over Europe. People want to travel, people want to go abroad as well. Not all cards are accepted everywhere, and that's an issue. Or maybe I have a card and I come on a charging point and it doesn't work because the interoperability is not there. And this is attention points that we have to really keep in mind, certainly when you're at the beginning, that this rollout goes smoothly and can take off, and that with the EV user experience is really of the highest importance. Now, I'm going to talk about some European policy files, the key files that we have to take awareness of. Now, talking about policy is not always the most exciting topic, so apologies for that, but let's take a look what the European point of view is on making e-mobility happening. So in the first place, we have the CO2 standards for cars and vans. A very important one, and you see the timeline, we are actually very close. We are waiting for the trialogues. Somebody who knows about the European policy will understand. But that means that we are at the end. So the European Commission has made a proposal that from 2035, not a single internal combustion engine can be sold anymore for cars and vans. Important one, eh? So end of diesel, end of petroleum. The Parliament agreed, and the Council is also most likely to agreement. We are discussing details, but the 2035 target is definitely on the table. Don't gonna go into details, but we're also talking about the heavy-duty vehicles. So also trucks and buses, also on the agenda. There has been done a consultation. Is it possible, yes or not? And yes, we see today electric trucks already on the road. There's still the discussion, can they do long distances or short distances? Well, again, with the development of the batteries, we see that it actually is going to happen, and going to happen even faster than we think. But also, not only faster, but the distance is also becoming bigger that are achievable to drive with your electric vehicle, electric truck in this case. So also there is a phase-out days target with 2035, more or less the latest, but we also need to get a trajectory. And that you also have to keep in mind, that you cannot just say, 2035 is nice. You have to start to do it right now, today, if you have that target in your mind. Because if you wait to 2034, Christmas time, December, it's going to be far too late. Infrastructure. The European Union is very good with acronyms. We're talking here about the AVERE, the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation. Well, everything is there in place, a regulation for all the member states in Europe, how infrastructure rollout should be done. A few aspects are very important on that. On the highways in Europe, on the TEN-T network, what they call it, every 60 kilometers there should be high power charging. So fast charging should be in place. Not only fast charging as a point, also the highest standards, which is today available as technology. So minimum 350 kilowatts. And if you split them out over the energy over different charging points, there is a minimum that you have to keep, which is 175 kilowatts. Which is good. It gives confidence to the user. They know if they drive around that they can charge on the highways. Also for slow charging, there is also a definition, and they have been very smart on the Commission side. They didn't count, once again, not in numbers of vehicles that should be chargeable. They counted in kilowatt hours of the batteries. So you have small cars, smaller batteries. You have bigger cars, bigger batteries, most likely, or often like that. And they're going to count how much capacity there has to be charged. So the average of sold cars with the battery capacity will be the dominator. This is not ended yet, so this is still in discussion, but most likely we're also going to land on those aspects. So there is a bit fine-tuning which is ongoing. But the principles are there, and it brings confidence to the user as well. EPBD, Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. And you will think, building directive, energy performance, what has that to do with vehicles? Well, actually, it's a very important one because, as already mentioned, home charging is a very important one, that you can do this. This is taken into account here. So if I want to install a home charging point in my shared parking lot in a parking building, it should be allowed. And this directive is pointing that out. It should be mandatory in new buildings that charge infrastructure should be in place. On which level? That discussion is still ongoing. Cabling should be there. The power should be there. But beside that, they also define what kind of charging should be available, and we talk about smart charging, so we can balance the energy demands over the grid. So we don't have a challenge on that point. And the last step would even bidirectional charging. Already mentioned in the first session this morning, bidirectional charging will be in the future very key to balance the global energy demands. And actually, I conclude from here. We know that everything is in place. Maybe I repeat myself. The vehicles are there. We know how to roll out the charge infrastructure. You can see already over here the vehicles that are standing there. How the charge infrastructure is happening, we know as well. The charging points are there. We know how to give people the passes, how to access that. We just have to do it. So there's absolutely not a single excuse. Just go ahead. The future is promising. We can get clean air in the cities, in your region. And the target is finally 2050. And I want to conclude here. Thank you.
Şimdi dünyanın başka köşelerine uzanıyoruz. Polonya, İtalya, İspanya ve Slovakya'dan konuklarımız olacak. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Hemen isimlerini takdim ediyorum. Zoom'dan salonumuza konuk olacaklar. Efendim, Polonya'dan Alternatif Yakıtlar Derneği Yönetim Kurulu üyesi Alexander Rush. İtalya'dan Motus Genel Sekreteri Francesca Naso, AVERE Başkan Yardımcısı Arturo Perez de Lucia ve Slovakya Electric Vehicle Association Patrick Krizanski. Hello.
My name is Arturo Pérez de Lucia. I'm the general manager of AVERE, which is the Spanish E-Mobility Association. And thank you for inviting me for this event. And it's a pity that I haven't been able to be there with you all, but we have some issues to work on here in Spain, and it has been impossible. Anyway, let me try to share a presentation. Okay. Perfect. So I think now you can see the screen. So as I said, I'm general manager of AVERE, which is the Spanish E-Mobility Association, and I'm a proud member of the board of AVERE. So thank you very much for inviting us. Let me start explaining what is AVERE. AVERE, as you know, is the association which gathers the industrial, technical, and services value chain of e-mobility in Spain, Portugal. We are more than 200 direct associated members, and we also gather institutions, and we are the advisory body for public administration. So we share the goals of AVERE, but in Spain, and internationally we are present in Europe, of course, through AVERE. And we are also involved in the Latin American market through the collaboration with bodies like Invest in Latam, BYD, and UNO Environment, because we consider that the Latin American market is called to be a very important market for e-mobility, and we must be able in Europe to share, technological knowledge and equipment and so on, because it's a market that will be very important in the future. So let me start explaining our situation in Spain. So Spain has a long tradition as a vehicle manufacturer, and we are currently the second largest producer in Europe of cars and vans and so on, and the 8th in the world. But we also manufacture electric vehicles of various types. Passenger cars, but also vans, buses, trucks, motorcycles, and mopeds. And indeed, we are also manufacturers of charging points, because we have several producers here in our country that are selling products in the whole world. And let me start by telling about the challenge. So we need to reinforce the industrial arm, because we are not similar and any other countries in the whole Europe. For example, Norway doesn't have industry, but we have a very strong industry, and we need to reinforce this industry in order to gain competitivity, employment, and so on, and in order to keep this employment and this competitiveness, because if not, we will lose a lot of competitiveness, to say so. And we export more than 80% of what we produce to markets that are banning ICEs on next years. But on the other hand, we are also manufacturing electric vehicles. This is the important thing. And we have an auxiliary industry which is powerfully committed to this market, with the design of new materials, light loads, and solutions for batteries. So we have actually, around 250,000 electric vehicles registered now, including battery vehicles, but also plug-in hybrids. And the goal for the Spanish government is to reach 5 million electric vehicles in 2030. So this year we expect to register up to 100,000 units in 1 year, but we need to register around 600,000 electric vehicles every year up to 2030 in order to comply with the goal of 5 million electric vehicles. So it's a huge challenge. Talking about infrastructure, from our point of view, deploying charging infrastructure, especially public, is not a matter of mathematics, but of installing the right charging points at the right location. So we have worked with the CPOs that are part of our association, and they have analyzed the market with a regional deployment of public charging infrastructure in Spain, and they foresee investments for up to 3,000 million euros by 2030. So considering the scenario of the national regulation and considering the entry of 3.5 million 100% electric cars, the CPOs propose some numbers, and these are the numbers. In 2022, 23,000 public access public charging points. In 2025, 70,000, and in 2030, 255,000. And if plans go as we expect, and we sell 5 million, we have 5 million 100 electric cars in roads in 2030. The numbers will be increased to 340,000 public access charging points. Actually, we have around 43% of public charging infrastructures waiting for grantings of permits and licenses to be operated. So we have a huge problem there with the public administrations in order to eliminate barriers for installing these charging points. And mostly of these charging points installed are being installed, but they have the capacity of getting energy. So we need to solve this problem, and we are working with the government in order to solve it as soon as possible. So there's a royal decree which establishes a minimum number of charging stations in existing parkings, considering one charging point every 40 charging parking lots in non-residential buildings, and in buildings from the public administrations, one charging points every 20 parking lots. So this law establishes that service stations that have sold up 10 million liters of diesel or more in 2019 shall install at least one DC charging infrastructure of power equal to or greater than 150 kilowatts. And it must be in service by the beginning of 2023. And the law also establishes that service stations that deliver up to 5 million liters of diesel or more, up to 10 million liters in 2019, shall install at least 150 kilowatt DC charging infrastructure. So we have a huge challenge, and probably it won't be possible to reach, but we are working on that in order to solve these barriers that I have said before. Talking about the other industry, we have mineral wealth and different metals and minerals, but also lithium. And we have a plan, the PERTEVEC, which is a plan with money coming from Europe in order to boost the industry based on the e-mobility. I mean, car manufacturers, battery, energy storage, and so on. And indeed, in our market, we are also developing an industry which is very interesting. It's based on second life batteries, and there are several companies offering these solutions for providing storage, energy storage for renewable energies, or indeed for feeding electric vehicles with less energy demand. So talking about services, we have a very interesting and mature ecosystem of shared mobility with motorcycles, bicycles, scooters, and cars. And Madrid, for example, the capital of Spain, is an example of zero-emission shared mobility. Indeed, you don't need to have a car if you live in Madrid, because you have several possibilities of using shared mobility with electric vehicles, and as well public transport and so on. So it's very, very interesting, and this is something that we need to increase, and the regulation and the development will boost this option. And of course, motor sharing is a very, very important market that is increasing in Spain, and we are installing these solutions in different countries. So the Spanish government launched the Recovery, Transformation and Resilience plans that includes a strategy for sustainable, safe and connected mobility, which will promote everything related to the transition to electric vehicles. That involves 13.2 billion euros. So we have the MOVES 3 plan, which is a plan which provides money for purchasing electric vehicles and charging infrastructures. It's not a perfect plan because you receive the money 1 year or a year and a half later than you buy the car, and this is something that we have to solve. And we also have the PERTEVEC, which is the plan that I said before, in order to reinforce the industry in our country. So, but we need to work in several aspects. So the conclusions could be that we are immersed in a technological and services industrial revolution in the automotive and mobility sectors towards electric, shared, connected, and autonomous vehicles. I mean, this is something that we have very clear from the industry perspective, but also from the administration. And the government's commitment to electric mobility is complete, but we need to reinforce aspects related to fiscal, aspects that need to be, boosted in order to make it possible to reach the 5 million electric vehicles in 2030. Electric vehicle is not only a tool for getting a sustainable mobility, but for us, the most important thing is that it's a tool for energy efficiency, because it's the only propulsion system able to interact with the grid, electricity grid, in order to boost renewable energies, distributed generation, and energy storage. So this is very important. And Spain has a very complete ecosystem around the industrial, technological, and service development of electric mobility. And it will be even more complete thanks to the promotion plans such as PERTEVEC. So with this vision, I hope you have a general point of view of what are we doing in Spain. And I let the colleagues to follow the roundtable. Thank you very much.
Think so. Okay. Probably now you can see me and see my presentation. I'm Francesco Nasa, I'm the Secretary General of Moto-C. I have the pleasure to be a member of the board of AVERE, and I represent the main association about the electromobility here in Italy. We have 53 associates among the main OEMs and CPOs, charging point operators, and mobility service providers, also the main partners that built actually charging infrastructures and components for electric mobility and electric cars and other vehicles, and a huge amount of associates that works in electric mobility services like insurance companies and recycle and consultancies and leasing companies. And we have a huge ecosystem of universities, research centers, and other associations that can help us in order to provide studies, analysis to institutions, to the electric mobility, but also to the entrepreneurial ecosystem and to the public in general. What is the actual situation, the current situation of the market here in Italy? Here you have the QR code. And you can go in our site, it's so public, and you can, unfortunately it's in Italian, but maybe you can use the translation in your browser. And you can see the current situation month by month, and each 3 months we have this mapping of the electric charging infrastructure. What is the situation in the car markets? This is a pity because this year, can you hear me? Okay. I go ahead. it's a pity because this year the electric car market in Italy is, in particular, the battery electric vehicle market share is lowering, is going down. There's a big problem in the total market in Italy. Last year we were one of the worst country for the loss respect to pre-pandemic situation. And the total market this year is not better with respect to the 2021 situation, and of course it's just slightly better with respect to the 2020 situation. So we have registered just 35,000, almost 36,000 electric cars. It's a good result with respect to other market, of course, but we were growing, more than doubling our market share and our volumes in the last 4 years. And this year, unfortunately, there is a contraction due to different problems, of course. The current situation of the availability of the product, because we don't have enough cars to satisfy the demand, and of course we have to wait something like 12 or 14 months in order to receive the car that we order. We have a problem, of course, of uncertainty in the product channel. So the product channel in BEV, battery electric vehicle, is contracting is lowering with respect to the channel last year. And of course there is also an uncertainty about the incentives, because we were late launching our incentive schemes, especially in respect to other countries. So in a bottleneck situation from the point of view of the production, of course the Italian market was less attractive with respect to the allocation of the cars to be sold in this very year, because the incentive scheme started in middle of May, and in all the other countries was pretty clear from January what would be the situation. So what is interesting anyway is that electric cars is more, of course, focused and more appreciated in the long-term channel and the fleet channel. So in general, in the non-property asset channels, and it's something that it's really happening in all the countries and among all the powertrains. But in Italy, as you can see, for the total market, it's not so accelerated, this trend. So the electric vehicle is accompanying and going in parallel with the servitization trend that is happening in all the countries. Which is the scenario, 2030 scenario that we are trying to design here in Italy. We don't want to make provision that it's really not easy at all nowadays, especially what we are passing through in the last 3 years. So what we are trying to understand is how to respect the 2030 targets that Italy is bindingly set with the European partners. So at least in order to respect the minus 40% emission targets that we were contracting with Europe in 2019, we as a country foresee to have a stock of battery electric vehicle of 4 million units in 2030. Of course, it's a huge challenge because nowadays we have a stock of 150,000, 170,000 battery electric vehicle circulating on our roads. So we have a huge challenge in front of us. If we take into account, of course, the 2030 target of the Fit for 55, we should overcome the 5 million stock of battery electric vehicles in 2030. Then it's really a more important challenge, of course. And it's really, in order to make you understand, nowadays our market share, as you saw, is something like 4%. And we need to reach the 50% target at least in 2027, at most in 2028, in order to reach those numbers that you can see in the green curve and in the orange curve. I will be as quick as possible, but I wanted to show you the situation of the current situation of the charging infrastructure network. Actually, it's growing pretty fast, pretty quickly, and we have a CAGR growth that is 32% aggregated in the last 2 years. In the last year, and but we have still too few high power charging points. From 50 kilowatts and more, we have just 7% of the entire charging points installed, public charging points installed in Italy. And there is also not so well coverage of the geographic coverage of the entire country. So as you can see in the map, there is a big concentration, of course, where there is an important cell of electric cars in each region. So Piemonte, Lombardia, Emilia-Romagna, and Lazio, of course, where is low. The total charging point installed, it's almost 33,000 in 16,700 infrastructure and in 13,000 locations. Is it enough? This is a question that we receive often here in Italy. Actually, Italy is not so bad. Is it not in a bad position? Let me say, because the problem is that we don't have so much electric vehicles circulating, and we don't have funding for public charging. So the chargers are actually following more or less the registration of electric cars. So respect to the number of electric cars circulating, Italy is not so badly positioned. But if we see what we should be, where we should be in the next years, of course we are not well positioned. We don't have so much charging point each 100 kilometers of roads. We don't have so much charging points every 10,000 inhabitants. So we have to work a lot, especially on high power chargers, and especially on on highways, because we don't have enough charging points on highways. Simply because we don't have actually, and currently, we don't have bids. The operators that has the concessions, of the highways management, they didn't launch any bid for installing charging infrastructure in their premises, and this is actually blocking the investment that are ready to be put in place in Italy since 5 years. Which will be the charging network in 2030 in the domestic premises perimeter. We still we are growing actually, but we don't have so much installed charging points in the domestic premises. In 2022 we estimate something like 130,000 wall boxes sold and installed in domestic premises, and just 10 to 20,000 installed in the enterprise premises. But we have to reach huge numbers, overcoming the 3 million charging points in companies and houses. In the public premises, so public accessible charging point, we need to reach something like 110,000, at least 110,000 charging points, and at least 50% of them should be high power chargers, from 50 to especially 100 and 150 and 200 kilowatts, in order to have a minimum coverage of from geographic point of view, and from the energy demand point of view of the vehicles circulating in 2030. What is the situation of national and local incentives? We are late, but we have an eco bonus, we have a purchasing incentive, but unfortunately we don't know how it will be set for the 2 years, for the next 2 years, because it's changing rapidly. In September, finally, the funds had been opened to also companies that wants to lease the electric cars. Before September was dedicated completely to product channel that, as I said, is contracting, is reducing itself. The product charging funds are actually not ready, so there is no funds available for product charging, and we are still waiting for PNRR funds, for recovery plan funds dedicated to public charging infrastructure. So I'm sorry to leave you with uncertainty. I hope that in a month or two, with the new government that is being set in these very days, I will be ready to tell you something more clear and with a good plan for electric mobility in the next years. Thank you for having listened to me, and sorry to have used a lot of time more.
Thank you, Francisco. Yeah. We go to the next speaker, Alex, PSPA.
Okay. So let me start. My name is Aleksander Raj. I represent the Polish Alternative Fuels Association, and I I'm here also in substitution of Maciej Mazur, who's a board member of AVERE, vice president of AVERE. I'm the board member of PSPA and the co-founder of the organization. As PSPA, we represent Poland, but we also think of ourselves as an organization that is largely representative for the Central Eastern European region. And this is mostly because Poland is very representative of the challenges and opportunities of this region. The speaker after me, Patrick, will also elaborate on to why there are particular markets in the CE that are leaders in particular sectors like the automotive. But I think the challenges regarding e-mobility in Poland are very common for other markets as well. We as PSPA have been on the market since 2016. We have over 200 members, 70 institutional partnerships. We are a very active organization, publishing around 15 reports and publications every year, implementing over 50 projects every year. We've organized nearly 150 events during our existence and operations. We've featured nearly 30,000 stakeholders at these various events. And we're also very active in cooperating with the public administration and amending law, bringing in legal provisions that will support the development of e-mobility. We've presented public administration with over 1,500 various recommendations and suggestions of how to make the law more adequate and relevant to advance in technology. We represent the entire value chain of mobility, from the OEMs, the automotive companies, to oil and gas companies, energy companies, EV charging infrastructure companies, renewables, and all the advisory and legal companies that are also part of this business. But most of all, we also represent the lithium-ion battery market, which is very important from our point of view as the Polish market. Now, I decided maybe to start with the challenges of the sector in Poland and of the Polish market in general. So it's first of all very important to note that 1/4 of the CO2 emissions in our country come from transport. We also have a very large growth of greenhouse gas emissions in Poland, and this is 10 times more than the average of the EU between 1990 and 2017. So this really shows how much of a challenge that is. And passenger vehicles, so regular road transport, is responsible for more than half of those CO2 emissions. This is why we perceive this as not only an important topic for the sector, but also for the entire economic outlook, both in Poland and the region. Now, a very serious problem for the region is also air pollution. Now, Poland, again, is very significant in showing that. 1/3 of the cities in the EU with the most polluted air are in Poland. We are 4th in ranking, and it's a very, very bad ranking. We also have very big numbers in terms of premature deaths caused by the various polluting chemicals that are released into the atmosphere, mostly from transport. We exceed 60 and 50 decibels in all sorts of registers in terms of exceeding noise pollution from transport as well.